All right, well, guys, I'm going to come back and try to do Act 3 too. Now, normally I do my filming after I've taught it in class, so that way everything kind of, I know I'm doing the same thing, but, and usually gives me a chance to have a refresher. Now, I've taught Macbeth for, goodness, 12 years now. So, I mean, I've taught it plenty. I know this well. So, bear with me if I'm a little bit confused here and there. I'm kind of hitting this cold, all right? So Act 3 begins. We've got the king dead. We've got Macbeth crowned the new king, and we want to see what's happening. So we start at the king's palace at Forres, and Banquo comes in, and you get a mini soliloquy from him where he's pointing out, "Hey, I feel like Macbeth did something he shouldn't have." You really get this sense that Banquo thinks that Macbeth killed Duncan or had someone kill Duncan for him. Uh, at this point, again, as he's thinking, Macbeth walks in, and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth start asking him some questions. They're apparently having a big banquet for Macbeth being crowned, and they want to know if where Banquo is going to be throughout the day. This must be in the morning. And they ask him, how far are you riding? Where are you going? And Macbeth asks a really weird question about, are you taking your son Fleance with you? And all of this. So Macbeth's kind of doing some checking up on Banquo. And, if you've read the play, which I know none of you have, but we know that Macbeth is plotting to kill Banquo, but he doesn't just want to kill Banquo. Remember, one of the prophecies was that Banquo's, children would be king. Banquo has one child. It's Fleance. So Macbeth's idea is now, while he so much believes in fate, and when it applies to good things for him, when it applies to things that he thinks are bad, he thinks he can change it. And that's such human trait. When good, if it's good, then that's what was supposed to happen. If it's bad, well, I was cheated. So Macbeth decides, if I can, if Banquo's out riding and he's out in the middle of nowhere, maybe I can kill him and his son, and then I can overcome that prophecy. And that's his plan. Now, remember, Shakespeare wants to really play with the idea of whether fate is really something we can control or not. And Macbeth thinks at this point he can, although he thinks he's fated to be king because that's what he wanted. But he also thinks, even though Banquo's fated to have a line of descendants that are kings, he thinks he can change that. So it just tells you how stupid we as human beings are. So anyway, Banquo rides out. Macbeth doesn't share this info with Lady Macbeth, what his plans are. Again, we see this as Macbeth is starting to pull away from his wife a little bit, and she's starting to go more to the guilt side, and he's going more to the I'm going to kill everybody side. Okay? He's got some great lines here. There's this little bit, I believe it's a soliloquy. I don't think Lady Macbeth is there anymore. She may not. She showed up at the beginning. Yeah, she was there briefly. So Macbeth says, "To be thus is nothing but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared." So he points out, he's like, nothing's being king is not that good because, well, I'm not safely the king. Something could still happen. If they find out that I was involved with killing the last king, I'm dead. So he points out that his biggest problem is Banquo because he knows how good of a guy Banquo is. Now remember, Banquo was believed, he wasn't really, but they believed he was an ancestor of King James, who this play was dedicated and written for. So, Shakespeare's sucking up to the guy who's paying the bills. All right. So he says, but Banquo's such a good guy, and I know if he finds out or if he suspects me, he's going to do something. So, well, we got to kill somebody else now. So we get this scene where Macbeth meets with two murderers, and he manipulates them really well, convinces them that Banquo is the reason their lives are terrible, even though it's probably because their title is murderer. So I'm assuming they've done some other stuff. So anyway, we have these two murderers, and Macbeth convinces them to kill Banquo and his son, Fleance. Now, in the movie, Fleance is older. I believe that in the play, the way it's designed, he should probably be considered younger. It makes Macbeth look worse, too, to kill a child. So I think that's important. But so anyway, Macbeth convinces them, hey, if you'll do this for me. He even makes a comment about, I guess you're men based on the fact that, you're biologically men, but real men take care of their family. He uses the same techniques Lady Macbeth used on him. So, but it works, and they decide they'll kill Banquo and his child. No big deal to them. So then scene one ends. We move into scene two, where we have Lady Macbeth, and she's talking to one of her servants, and she's really kind of going through the same concern that Macbeth is. She starts feeling, or I'm sorry, we do see the beginnings of it. We see more later. I'm ahead of myself. I told you I might get confused. We see the beginnings of some doubt there. She says, naught's had all spent where our desires got without content. 'Tis safer to be thus which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. You get that idea again that, they've gotten what they wanted and they're still not happy. There's this, to get what you want, but to go the wrong way to get it, that guilt is eating them alive. So Macbeth kind of shares with her that he's upset. He's like, we got this, but Banquo's an issue. I don't know what we're going to do with him. He points out, let me read this. He says, Duncan is in his grave after life's fitful fever. He sleeps well. Treason has done his worst, nor steel nor poison, malice, domestic, foreign levy. Nothing can touch him further. He points out Duncan's so lucky. He's at a place now where nothing can hurt him, which, that's a Macbeth, you killed the guy. I mean, that's not a good thing. But Macbeth is just pointing out how much he's worried. I mean, the term sleep there comes up. Remember, Macbeth is having a hard time sleeping. So Macbeth is just, he's having his little pity party here about how, I thought this was going to be different if I got what I wanted. And Lady Macbeth tries to tell him, hey, relax. She starts kind of believing more in fate, it seems here. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. We just need to wait and see, which is probably what they should have done about the kingship. But now, a little late for that. Macbeth says, oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. What a great line from that, telling her, it's just, this is one of the products of when we do something wrong. You have that guilt, and that guilt shows in various ways, and some of them is in suspicion and paranoia, and Macbeth is the king of that. Macbeth basically hints to Lady Macbeth, I've got a plan, but he doesn't want to share it with her, which I mentioned that earlier. That's a big deal because it shows he's starting to kind of branch away from her making the decisions, and now he's making them. He wants to keep her in the dark. All right. So scene 3 begins. Now this is the murder scene. So we have something weird happens. There's a third murder. Remember, Macbeth met with 2 murderers. Who is this third murderer? They even indicate that, like, where are you there? And we find out that, like, the murderer says, well, Macbeth sent me. And so you get this idea that Macbeth is checking up on them. But I'm going to tell you what it really is. Because if you read the scene, the murderers kill Banquo. But something weird happens. The lights go out and Fleance gets away. My opinion, and what I think Shakespeare's trying to do, is that third murderer is representative of fate. Fleance isn't supposed to die now. So that third murderer intervenes and stops it from happening and makes sure he gets away. That's how I think that's designed. I mean, Shakespeare's not stupid. He can count 1, 2, and 3. He adds a third and he even indicates it. So there's obviously a reason. Remember, we don't do things accidentally as writers. Okay? All right, scene 4 comes in. It's the beginning of the banquet where all the various lords are coming in, and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are greeting them, and all of this is going on. The murderers show up, and they let Macbeth know, Banquo done, we chopped him up. But Fleance got away. And Macbeth initially is pretty upset, but he's like, okay, well, the bad part's done. Fleance can't do anything to me now. I'll get him eventually. So he goes back to enjoy his party. But he notices there's nowhere to sit. And everybody thinks, like, what's wrong with you? There's a spot right here. And they point to a chair. But to Macbeth, there's something sitting there. He finally notices what it is. And here's our second hallucination. We had the dagger from the dagger soliloquy last act. Well, this time he sees Banquo's ghost. Now, no one else can see it. So Macbeth is sitting there talking to this empty chair like a psychotic person. He basically going through, like, he's terrified. Why is this ghost here? He's like, go back to where I put you. You should be dead. You should be in the ground. Everyone sees this happening. They're quite disturbed. Lady Macbeth becomes exceptionally clever here and says, oh, don't worry about it. He has these fits from time to time. They're rare, but if you acknowledge them and interact with him, they just get worse. So she's basically telling them, leave him alone. It'll go away. While he's having that, she tries to get a hold of him, like just between the two of them, not in front of everyone, and tell him, pull your stuff together. You can't behave this way. She's like, why are you yelling at the chair? Because, she can't see the ghost either. So Macbeth kind of regains his sense of his mind comes back. He sees the ghost leave. He breathes a little bit. He goes and has something to drink, turns away. When he turns back, the ghost is back. And now the fit begins again. And he starts yelling and screaming, and Lady Macbeth just finally sends everybody home. She's like, get out. He's ruined the evening. This isn't going to get better. You being here is going to aggravate it. She sends them all out. And, again, tries to get, Macbeth to pull it together. And she tells him basically, she says, hey, you lack the season of all nature, sleep. She says, you just need to rest, which we pointed out he can't do. Now, obviously, he's probably sleeping some. I mean, he can't, this takes place over, a long period of time. But, still, it's the fact that the lack of sleep, she thinks that's what's causing him to go crazy. it's his guilt and his he's a good guy who did something bad, and now he's invested in it. He's got to keep doing more bad things, and the more he does, the more it corrupts him. All right. She does mention Macduff. She's like, why is Macduff not here? And Macbeth points out at that point that he knows that Macduff is not, a friend of his. And he's even got spies in his house. We're going to find out later. He has spies everywhere. That's, again, a product of the guilt. He doesn't trust anyone. All right. He says something very sinister at the close of scene 4. He says, we are but young indeed. In other words, he just looks at Lady Macbeth and says, you haven't seen anything yet. Watch. He's got a taste for blood now, and some more people are going to die, in his opinion. Okay. Scene 5, I never do. It's almost always skipped in plays. It's a weird scene with Hecate, one of the witches. It serves really no purpose, in my opinion. What it does is it adds a little bit of mysticism to this play, because there are debates about some of the stuff that happens in this, that they were actual spells that witches did and things like that, which made the play even creepier. It's probably not true. Even if it was, I mean, so what? It's not like it's going to do anything. But there's this, definite belief that gives the play a little more credence. James the First was obsessed with witches, and so using that subject matter means that Shakespeare definitely knows his audience. Okay. Well, then we get scene 6, and scene 6 is like the closing scene from Act 2, where it's really not all that important. It just gives you a little bit of additional information. And what we get really is that Macbeth's a bad king and people don't like him. He's a tyrant. Um, people are being nice to him because they're scared of him. But, and Lennox and this lord here are kind of talking in a way, they're trying to feel each other out. Because, you don't want to be the one to say, man, I really can't stand Macbeth, and the other person's a Macbeth loyalist, because then, you're dead. So, but we find out that neither of them really likes Macbeth. We also get the information that Malcolm has fled. I think this is where we find out that Malcolm fled to England. Yeah, Malcolm goes to England and Donalbain goes to Ireland. They've split themselves up so they can't be in the same place and be killed. And Macduff is actually, I think Macduff, we find at this point that Macduff is going to go look for, go speak to Malcolm and try to get help. So this is some of that exposition that has to happen, but normally it would be just like in narration if you were writing prose, but because we don't have that option with the play, it has to be done through dialogue. So this random discussion here is really to let us know here's what's going on. Lennox says, and this is the very last part, he says, advise him to a caution, to hold what distance his wisdom can provide. Some holy angel fly to the court of England and unfold his message ere he come, that a swift blessing may soon return to this our suffering country under a hand accursed. So we find out here that they really are unhappy with their current situation. So, and that gets you through Act 3. Now, Shakespeare often will have the climax of his stories, some of his plays, or really his earlier ones, in the middle, like right there in Act 3, and then Act 4 is like the falling action, and Act 5 is a little bit of that in the resolution. I would definitely say that's not the case here. I don't think the climax occurred anywhere in there. When we get into Act 4, we're going to get into seeing the witches again. Macbeth wants to come and get further clarification. You'll notice major changes in him, and we're also going to see how bad he's gotten as he deals with wanting to punish Macduff. So something to look forward to as we move forward. So again, right at under 15 minutes. So we're getting there. I hope this was helpful. I hope this will help you with your questions. Again, anything that you're not sure about, email me so I can help you or ask in class. And best of luck to you.